All right, let's kick it. Beat the Mets. Beat the Mets. The Cubs will show you how to beat the Mets. Know what? We'll tell you how the Northside National League Ball Club beat the Metropolitans from the friendly confines. We'll tell you how they did it coming up. The White Sox went to Oakland, and yes, it's true. They took 2 out of 3 from the A's in grand fashion. We'll give you that review of that series coming up. In the NFL draft, which is a couple of days away, GM Ryan Pauls for the Bears, he has something up his sleeve, or does he not? We'll tell you what they should do with that 25th pick in the first round. In Also, in other basketball news, the NBA playoffs got underway. Some of the games were good and some of them were blah. And the Stanley Cup playoffs were outstanding during the first 2 days. That, in a special edition of Old School TV Monday Sports Style, as Sid and LaKeena will kick off the Monday extravaganza starting now.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Keep him on the field. And this one, drive into left center field. Going back is Churio at the wall. Get out! Robert Jr., his 4th of the season. And the Sox take the lead 2-1.
Armstrong gets into another one. Sends Edman back. He's watching it land in the stands. What a night from Pete Crow Armstrong. Goes wide. Up the guard again. And he scores. What a play!
On Jordan Bennington. No chance at all for the Blues netminders. Connor Bedard. Wow.
Getting what a pass. Buzelis with the fade on the drive.
They're blitzing. It's picked up. Caleb throws. Middle of the field. Loveland catch. Breaks away the 30. Loveland 20. Loveland 10. Loveland end zone. Touchdown Bears.
Welcome to another episode of the Monday Extravaganza edition of Second City Sports. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in the living color right here on Sports Soul Chicago, along with Miss LaKeena McGee, which is she. Sidney Brown here, you know it's me. You can follow yours surely on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, X, using an IG.
Be sure to download the Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We're unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinion during our 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show, you got to hit us up at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll and or do something silly, dumb, or stupid, I've given LaKeena full powers to give you dumbos to bill and be a boot.
Toodles.
But before we begin, shout out to our live gang, and that's LIVE Live Entertainment Gang that's checking us out live in the living color right now at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube channels at 12:21 p.m. Central Standard Time. But as always, much love to the replay gang that's checking us out on the replay, also at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook and YouTube channels. Don't you ever forget our motto where we talk sports, music, or entertainment. We will always provide.
We invite you to the best of Second City Sports as we get going here. A busy show for this Monday. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, so the NHL playoffs. Some were good, some games were good, some were nah. And there were some interesting familiar faces in some of these games this weekend. We'll talk about that. We got a double dose of old school TV Monday. The NBA has also announced their regular season awards. Some sports media news. And also, too, of course, we get you ready for the NFL draft. It's draft week. coming up as we give you the latest rumors of what the Bears will do, and other teams will do as well. And also a couple of big moves as one All-Pro is staying put while the other pro is saying bye-bye. Does the latter, the team he went to and become a contender with him there? We'll talk about that and a lot more. But then we're going to talk some baseball as the Cubs sweep the Mets. They took advantage of the Mets going in free for all right now, including they won the series in various forms. They beat the Mets 12-4 on Friday, but they also won a pitcher's duel 2-1 to take the series and sweep the series and giving the Mets their 11th straight loss. Nico Horner, who has been playing very well lately, probably one of the hottest hitters in baseball. I don't know what the Mets were thinking. I don't know what Devin Williams and the Mets were thinking by pitching to him, but but he got the tying RBI, I should say, and and it was he also got the go ahead home run that ended up winning that for him as well. So Sid also Michael Conforto, who actually got the tie in the ninth inning, and he's actually been pretty actually has contributed to the Cubs so far. So we got the good Michael Conforto here. But so Sid, what do you think about that whole Mets series for the Cubs?
Well, the Mets are terrible, and shout out to Marquee Sports host, pre and post game host Cole Wright. He took a friendly shot at Carlos Mendoza at the start of the post game show, and saying that he needs to update his resume. I think if the Mets will start to say that around this time next month, they'll be all for him. But that's neither here or there. But when you're trying to become in the playoffs and hopefully win the division in the case of the Cubs this year, your identity becomes you for the most part. But when you're not fitting to your identity, how can you find other ways to be productive? As we said about this Cubs team over the last few years, they are a home run hitting team, and that's no lie. But when the home runs are not coming in droves like they should, in your opinion, how do you find other ways to win? They found, as you mentioned, they found a way to win on Friday, blasting them 12-4. The last two games, their pitching wasn't great, but it was good enough to keep them in the ball game. Shout out Jameson Taillon for the win last Saturday. Shout out to Javier Sa, who's been filling in very well ever since he was called up for the minor leagues just a couple of weeks ago. LaKeena, as we talked about here on the show before, the Cubs had to be aggressive on the base pass, which is hit and run, base stealing, bunting. You saw just about all that in this weekend series against the struggling Mets team. The Cubs found a way to take advantage of it. And shout out to your manager, Craig Counsell, for pushing the right buttons. Moises Ballesteros, Carson Kelly, as you mentioned, on Saturday, and of course yesterday with Nico Horner delivering an RBI fly out to score Pico Armstrong for the eventual game winner. And Michael Conforto, who knows that Mets organization, who drafted him and brought him up just about a decade ago, came up with that big hit in the ninth inning to force extra innings. So Craig Counsell is dealing with a lot right now. We'll talk about it in just a minute, but he pushed all the right buttons this weekend. Sometimes when things are not going your way, you got to find other ways to win a ball game.
You listen to Second City Sports on Sports with Chicago. LaKeena, McGee, Sidney Brown with you. So we talk some Cubs, and we'll get the White Sox coming up here, and also the rest of the MLB. And unfortunately, Twitter is not working right now, so that's why we're not doing it at the moment. But back to the Cubs. I mean, look, like I said, the Cubs did in different forms. Look, they showed that they can win high scoring games. Scoring 10 to 12 runs. That's what they did on Friday. And also, they can also win it when they have to grind it out. And this is what happened here yesterday. And maybe between two, that Saturday game that they beat the Mets 4-2. But I think it's one of those things where I think right now Counsell has to kind of deal with what he's getting, especially with the pitching. The pitching's actually been pretty solid. James Atana had a nice outing on Saturday that got the Cubs to help out there. Carlos Theobar has actually been pretty solid lately on the bullpen. So far, at least the Cubs have actually been pretty good. Now they will face the Phillies again, staying in the NL East for 4 starting tonight. But it's going to be interesting to see if the Cubs can kind of keep it going. They've won 5 in a row, and like I said, it doesn't get any easier for them. So this is actually the hard part of their schedule, if you will. They play the Phillies, of course, for 4 this week. Then they play Then they got to go out west. They play the Dodgers and the Padres. Both teams. I know the Dodgers. We'll see what mood they're in because they lost a tough series to the Rockies of all teams this weekend. But it doesn't get any easier for them, and we'll see what happens here with the Cubs. Just look, if you can split the series with the Phillies, that'd be great. If you get 3 out of 4, that's even better. Like I said, it's a tall task for the Dodgers series, but look, you've actually played with the Dodgers and show that you can actually, you can actually are pretty. Maybe the Dodgers are at a whole nother level, but they're going through some injuries right now, so you can kind of see if they can get them at a good point. The Padres, we'll see what happens with the Padres, but I think this is set up where the Cubs, there's the hard part of the schedule where just win your series and see if you can kind of at least make some ground in that something very competitive National League Central.
You brought up that Cubs bullpen. That was going to be my next point. Caleb Thielbar, who, as I said last year when the Cubs acquired him, he's the best left-handed reliever in league, and he showed that throughout the course of the season. Now he's stepping in, replacing Daniel Plincy of the Cubs original. Forgetting Phil Maton, who you signed to a 2-year deal. He's down right now. You have other couple of guys in that bullpen who are injured right now. So Council has to shuffle some things around. Colin Ray and Javier Side were both expected to be long relief guys coming out of the bullpen this year, but due to the injuries to Justice Steele, who's supposed to be back next month, and I believe Matthew Boyd is supposed to be back in the starting rotation this week, so he's going to release some things a little bit, but they had to fill in emergency start roles, and they've done a great job as well. So Craig Counsell, even though he has more say in that front office with Jed Hoyer and GM Carter Hawkins, that bullpen at this time last year, it was a much more of a disaster because he was trying to figure out some things and figure out guys who's going to get his 3 to 6 outs toward the end of the game. This year is due to more to injuries, but it's a dangerous proposition to have to outscore teams every time. And like I say, that's not going to happen. Teams are not going to trade for decent relievers to guys who are consistent to get your 6 to 9 outs every night. I like the Caleb Thielbar role as of right now being your closer to until Palencia comes back, but you got to find the other guys in your middle relief to hold it down while your offense is hopefully cooking until Palencia and Phil Maton gets back from injury. Both of them get returned from injuries.
Your starters for that 4-gamer, you got Colin Ray against Aaron Nola. That should be a fun one tonight. You got Shota Imanaga, who's actually been pretty solid in his last couple of outings. He'll face Jesus Luzardo. No worry on who the Phillies will, because they haven't announced their start yet for Wednesday, but they will face Matthew Boyd. And the first match of that series, you got Edward Cabrera and Christopher Sanchez. So that should be a fun one as well for the Cubs. So like I said, just split the series with the Phillies. You can kind of get yourself back into the thick of it and be right there in the thick of it in the National League Central.
Yeah, all you have to do if you're the Cubs, just stay consistent, keep taking series. Do not worry about who else is in your division. Do not worry about all the other teams in your division. Just take care of your business. Play the teams that are in front of you, and you should be okay.
We'll take a really quick break. Of course, we'll talk a little bit more some White Sox as they take 2 out of 3 against the A's in Sacktown. They go down to Arizona to face the D-backs, who one of their hottest hitters. We'll talk about that. And also, time permitting, we'll get into some, let's do the baseball first, and we'll figure out what we can do after that. But LaKeena McGee, City Brown, Second City Sports, on Sports Chicago. More Diamond Talk coming up right after this.
Hey, it's your boy, the Superback, Sean Sierra, and be sure to follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. On Facebook, Instagram, and our Roku channel, you can find us at Sports Zone Chicago. And on Twitter, we are at Sports Zone Chi. Also, be sure to download our mobile app so you can take Sports Zone Chicago with you on the go.
Got it done here. Ouch. And we're gonna make sure you lit this time. Ouch. You're not gonna get me this time.
Ow, Manny!
Whoops. Let's try an easy one.
Every day we take steps to keep the people we love safe, but some health risks are easy to miss. Ticks hiding in the yard can spread germs, like the ones that cause Lyme disease. Mice searching for food can spread bacteria that makes us sick. Mosquitoes lay eggs in standing water and can spread West Nile virus and more. Cockroaches are drawn to water in the home, leaving behind allergens that can trigger asthma attacks. Common pests can threaten our health. Learn how to protect your family at pestworld.org.
Hey, this is Corey McGee, and I listen to Sean and Maya on the morning show.
Welcome back to Second City Sports. This is Monday extravaganza edition. You're locked and loaded, and we're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. LaKeena McGee is she. Sidney Brown here is me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG is SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, X, even though it's not working right now, and LaKeena is going to be in the IG.
We're going to continue our baseball talk, discussing the White Sox, a little bit wrap up on the Cubs and the best and worst from this past weekend in Major League Baseball. If you have any questions or comments regarding those subjects, you can definitely hit us up right now at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you.
The best were alive for the White Sox over Sacramento as they take 2 out of 3 against the A's, including outdoing the A's in a rubber match series. Medivo Murakami, he's been, Mateka Murakami, I should say, he's been, he went deep 4 times. Noah Schultz got his first MLB career major league win, and as Murakami's been really solid. He's has had at least 1 hit in his last 8 games. And look, the White Sox, that Saturday game, they should have swept the A's, but the bullpen unfortunately blew that one as the A's walked off in extra innings on Saturday. But good for the White Sox. They win in 2 out of 3 in Sacramento. They go to Arizona where they play tomorrow against the D-bats team that's been playing very well. Also, we'll talk about one of their hitters in just a second here. But Sid, what do you think about that series with the A's?
Yeah, the White Sox, we talked about it all year long. Who's going to step up besides Munetaka Murakami on offense? Well, Miguel Vargas stepped up with a big home run yesterday. Also, too, Colson Montgomery, we talked about him last week on our shows that he needs to step up, and his bat is starting to come alive quietly. And you saw what happened, as you mentioned, in Sacramento against the Oakland A's over the weekend. I know MLB doesn't want me to say that, but they're not in charge of our show. But regardless of the point, with the offense jumping out against the A's early, the White Sox should have won, as you mentioned, all 3 of those games. Their bullpen needs a full inning, but I'll get to that another time. But shout out to Eric Fetty, not Eric Fetty, Davis Martin, who had a great performance last Friday. As I mentioned, the offense set the tone for the starting pitching. Davis Martin took advantage of it. Eric Fetty was not great on Saturday, even though that the Sox did have the lead. He wasn't great, but he tried to keep a minute. Of course, the bullpen gave it all the ways you mentioned. But yesterday, Noah Schultz in his first road start, as we said on the show last week, this start was going to be key because he's not going to have the pressure of the home crowd, everybody in the stadium cheering for him. You could tell the nervousness got to him last Tuesday, a week ago tomorrow, in his debut against Tampa Bay. Yesterday, it was just him in that mound and facing the Ace lineup, and he went to work yesterday. 5 innings pitched, gave a 1 hit, 1 run, 1 walk to 6 strikeouts. It was very impressive to collect his first major league win. Hopefully, many more for that young man in the White Sox uniform. So Noah Schultz, as we said, this second start was very important. He got the job done. The offense backed them up early, and the White Sox with those bats, as you mentioned, with the day off today, they'll travel to play the Diamondbacks, who had their troubles against the Toronto Blue Jays. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes, but can this offense keep up the momentum? Chase Meintraub, their leadoff hitter, got it going over the weekend. Also to Luis Angel Acuna, got it going too with a couple of big hits over the weekend. So when everybody starts to hit on one accord, it's contagious, and the momentum has to keep going for this White Sox offense. As we mentioned, the only thing that's really kept the Sox barely afloat, even though there's still a few games under 500, is started pitching. We know the bullpen's been terrible. And outside of Coastal Montgomery and Muna, they put it all together against the A's last weekend, took advantage of their mistakes, winning the series out there for the first time in looks like in years. But let's see if they can keep it going against Arizona starting tomorrow night.
I think that the balance attack for the White Sox, we know the White Sox can hit. It was actually very warm out there in Sacramento, so that's why the bats were able to come alive for the White Sox. So they were to kind of take advantage of that and being able to kind of like at least close the door with the bullpen. And Schultz had a nice showing yesterday as well. So now he's 1-1. Sox go to 8-14. Now your starters for this series, Sean Burke. This is tomorrow, folks. Sean Burke against Bill Kelly. That should be an interesting matchup there. Let's see what happens. On Wednesday, Anthony Kay will be up against Eduardo Rodriguez, who also been pretty solid. His ERA is under 2 so far this year. And Davis Martin, we'll see if he can keep it going against Michael Soraka. That's going to be an interesting matchup too. He's 4-0 this year, so that should be an interesting matchup to finish up that series. So they finish up their West Coast trip. So we'll see if the White Sox can take this series against the D-backs. Like I said, we'll see the D-backs. Defense are not going to be in a very good mood after, they did win 2 out of 3 against the Blue Jays. They didn't do well in their rubber match yesterday. We'll get to that in a second. But Corbin Carroll has been lights down. They're going to be, the White Sox pitcher is going to be facing him this series. And if you see what he's been doing so far, he has 6 doubles, 3 triples, 3 home runs, 16 RBIs, and 11 walks. No other MLB player has reached those marks before the end of April in a season since RBI became a stat all the way back in 1920. So the White Sox pitching staff is going to have a challenge this week against Carroll. Like I said, the D-backs took 2 out of 3 against Toronto. Like I said, the rubber match, the Jays outslugged them there. They had an 8-run first inning to avoid getting swept. So they snapped a 4-game skid. But as far as the D-backs are concerned, we'll see how it could be take the over, I guess, when it comes to hitting this week.
Hopefully, there's a White Sox manager, Will Venable, calling you to get some last-minute tips, but I'll try to help him out here. Of course, outside of last Saturday's loss, the White Sox held Tyler Soderstrom and Nick Kurtz in check. And that's how you beat good teams. As we say all the time in the world of baseball, good pitching always beats good hitting. And you mentioned about Corbin Carroll. He's one of the best young hitters in the league. Let's not forget about Nolan Arenado, the former Colorado Rocky and St. Louis Cardinal third baseman for the last few years. He's over there on Arizona now. He's been killing it with his bat. He started out slow. Now he's starting to get it going a little bit. So the White Sox can neutralize those 2 batters throughout this series. I think they have a shot to at least steal a game. I think they'll win 1 game in the series, but if they can win 2 like they did against the Oakland A's, I think this road trip will fare very well for the White Sox. If they get, like I said, if they get sneak in and take 2, they'll definitely be great coming home. at the end of the week to face the Nationals after a 4-2, potentially 4-2 road trip. That's going to be very impressive. Now, one statistic I'll leave with you as far as Munetaka Murakami is concerned with his power numbers. Out of his 8 home runs, guess without Googling, how many home runs has he hit off of left-handed pitching?
I'll say 5.
I'll give you one more guess.
That 4. I'll go like a number below 4.
3 of his 8 home runs have been off of left-handed pitching. I'll repeat once again. Out of 8 home runs that Murakami has hit this year, 3 of them has been off of left-handed pitching. We talked about it before the season started. That how will he adjust to playing in the States on the biggest stage in Major League Baseball? He still has work to do on his defense, even though his defense has been slightly above average up to this point. But he's hit left-handed pitching okay. 3 out of his 8 home runs have come off of left-handers, and I think with that adjustment to his batting stance, I think those numbers should go up. We'll see how Murakami improves on this road trip and for the days going forward for the Chicago White Sox. You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid LaKeena here with you as we go into the rest of Major League Baseball from this past weekend. You mentioned LaKeena, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Blue Jays, the Pittsburgh Pirates. They win their series against the Tampa Bay Rays. Paul Skeens did not have the world's greatest game in his start last Saturday, but the Pittsburgh Pirates found a way to take 2 out of 3. Found the Tampa Bay Rays. And the New York Yankees, looks like everything's right in the world again. You play the Kansas City Royals despite a 2-hour rain delay yesterday. You play the Kansas City Royals in a rubber match. Aaron Judge finally hits a dinger at New Yankee Stadium. The Yankees sweep the Kansas City Royals out of town.
Yeah, they outscored the Royals like 24 to like 6 or 7 or something like that. So they were able to, they definitely needed that series after splitting their series with the Angels and losing, I think, like 5 or 6 in a row before that. So I think they really needed this to kind of, get it going. Hopefully they can find their groove. Looks like Judge has found his groove. Cody Bellinger homered twice in that Friday series where they beat the Royals 13-4 on that Saturday game, and they shut out the Royals there too. So I don't know what's going on over there in Kansas City, but it'll be interesting to see what happens down there if they can't get it go. But as far as the Yankees are concerned, I think this should be a good kind of jumpstart to a little bit of a run. The Rays, I mean, look, the Pirates. Look, there are some people say that the Pirates could perhaps maybe challenge one of the wild card spots. We'll see. Like I said, I know that the West. We'll talk about the Western National League Central in a second. They're all playing very well right now. The Brewers have kind of fallen off a little bit, so we'll see. But it's going to be interesting to see if those teams can get it going, kind of keep it going, and maybe we'll see these standings again in about a month and see how these standings go. Baltimore, a tough series loss for them as they lose 3 out of 4, I should say, to the Guardians, and that's going to be interesting to see if Baltimore is starting to fall off a little bit. Detroit, I know they're playing in Boston right now as far as Patriots Day after the Boston Marathon. They're actually trailing 6-3 right now to the Red Sox. Finish up the series. We'll see if they can at least take the series. If the Red Sox hang on, they'll split their series. So they did have won 2 of the first 3 in that series as they finish up there in Boston. So Detroit's been looking really good too. For the most part, the West is getting kind of interesting. The Rangers didn't have a great weekend. They lose 2 out of 3 to the Mariners. Like the Mariners are starting to kind of get it going here, and I think that AL West is gonna get pretty interesting.
Yeah, going back to that Detroit-Boston series, Tariq Skubal pitched a whale of a game last Saturday for the Tigers to win the second game of that series. And, of course, yesterday they got to a former White Sox starter, Garrett Crochet, who's now with the Red Sox. But I was watching some of the game earlier today before we came on here live to record. The Boston Red Sox, we know this year their offense has been up and down, but their strength has really been their starting pitching in when the White Sox, not White Sox, when the Red Sox starting pitching, when their starting pitchers pitch 6 innings or more, there are they are 8-0. When their starters do not pitch 6 innings or more, they are 0-13. So that tells you all that you need to know about the Red Sox right now. You mentioned about the Detroit Tigers. We know they have a strong starting staff with Tariq Skubal and Jack Flaherty, who pitched earlier today, Casey Mize. But their offense has been kind of up and down. And I know they played Kansas City last week and they took the series from them, and it's been up and down against the Red Sox here this past weekend. But if the Tigers' offense can get it going, I think that the Tigers' pitcher can be that much more dangerous. I want to talk to you going back to the NL Central. You talk about the Pittsburgh stay consistent. We'll see. But the Cincinnati Reds 14-8 right now after two come from behind wins against the Minnesota Twins, completing the sweep yesterday up there at the Target
Yeah,
Center.
like I said, I don't know. Like I said earlier, I don't know if any of these teams, look, one or two or maybe three of these teams could fall off in about a month. So look, so far, look, Suarez has been very solid for Cincy, and I think it's gonna be one of those things where, like I said, I think it's gonna be interesting to see if they can keep it up. I know Dane Myers is very solid for them as well, so we'll have to wait and see if the Reds are for real.
All right, going to the AL West, the LaKeena Seattle Mariners, after losing the series opener against the Texas Rangers last Friday, 5-0, being shot at home. J.P. Crawford got his first home run of the year yesterday as part of the 5-2 win for the Seattle Mariners over the Texas Rangers. They beat the Rangers in the second game of that series last Saturday night by the score of 7-3. The Seattle Mariners are 3 games below 500 at 10-13. The Rangers are now 11-11 after losing their series in the Pacific Northwest over the weekend. The Mariners, they were right there for the World Series last year. We know that their starting pitching is very good. Brian Wu pitched his off yesterday. The Seattle's bullpen has been struggling here and there, which was the strength of the team last year. The Texas Rangers, they're built on offense, but their pitch has kind of been as you mentioned, a lot of these teams are trying to find their footing. But it looks like your Mariners are starting to carry some momentum. They take 2 out of 3 against the division rival Rangers at home.
Yeah, I think Seattle is starting to kind of find their groove a little bit. Like I said, they got a lot of new guys, some new guys and stuff, and also Julio Rodriguez is still there. He's starting to find his groove. Brian Wu has been very solid for them. George Kirby pitched a really solid outing against the Rangers on Saturday. So we're kind of looking forward to seeing what they do here. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what the Mariners do, and it's sort of like I said, no one's run away in that division as of yet. So I think we'll see if these teams kind of find their groove, if you will. Now, as far as the National League East is concerned, Atlanta, they're starting to kind of find their groove. They've won 5 in a row, including sweeping the Phillies. We'll get to the Phillies in a second here, but getting Ronald Acuna Jr. back has been very, very beneficial. Chris Sale had a solid outing on Saturday, pitching 7 good, strong innings. Austin Riley has been hitting the ball very well. He homered twice in the opener of that series. So they're starting to kind of get it going there. Now the Phillies, you never know. Hopefully Zach Wheeler will be back soon. I think they really need him to kind of stabilize that pitching. Miami, I mean, look, everyone else in that division is under 500 after the Braves. So, we talked about the Mets struggles ad nauseum so far. So I don't know. Like I said, you'll talk to us again in about a month to see if these standings change. But it looks like Atlanta's kind of the class in that division.
Yeah, don't forget the Atlanta Braves do not have Spencer Strider yet. There's all-star starting pitcher. He's still on the injured list right now. Going back to the AL West, the Houston Astros, they were swept by the St. Louis Cardinals at home last weekand. The Astros are having all kinds of problems. I don't know if they'll be able to recover, but we shall see. I'm with you, LaKeena, about these other teams. They're bunched in. The St. Louis Cardinals, even though they're not selling out their games at home anymore because of this rebuild. They've been playing well to start the year. And going to back to the NL West, the San Diego Padres, after losing on Friday night at Los Angeles against the Angels, of course, that was the first home game for the Angels after the passing of of Angels franchise legend Garrett Anderson. They won that game on Friday, but the Padres collected themselves and got their act together and won the last 2 games of their series in Anaheim to take their series. But the Rockies and the Dodgers, of course, they're finishing their weird 4-game wraparound weekend series later on today. But again, did you see the film from last Friday's game at Coors Field? It was filled with snow, like 5-6 inches of snow. They had to shovel the snow off the field hours before the game. And of course, the Dodgers had fun with it, throwing snowballs at each other in the dugout. Of course, that was the lone game that the Dodgers won in that series. But Colorado muster up some offense, and they won the last 2 games of the series. Let's see if they can take 3 or 4 today from the Dodgers. But if you're a Dodgers fan, of course, as we said before, you beat Colorado at Dodger Stadium, but we go out to Coors Field, and this has been recent histories, folks. Strange things happen up there in that Mile High City.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting to see. But like I said, either they do end up, like I said, I do think they're gonna end up splitting that series. But look, we all know that the Dodgers always have a little bit of I don't want to say hard time, but they always have trouble over at Coors Field because it's definitely the altitude and the elements and such. So I think that's why and whatever, and the weather is a little bit weird. So yeah, I mean, look, I know Dodgers fans are gonna freak out like, oh my God, they lost the series to the Rockies. They didn't sweep them. Look, it's baseball. Things happen. Look, they always do this at least once or twice. So folks need to just chill. And yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see if they can at least get the series, and hopefully they can split that series.
Yes. And one more team to report to you guys on in the NL West is the San Francisco Giants. The Washington Nationals said, no, you're not going to sweep us in our own ballpark. The Nationals took care of the San Francisco Giants yesterday, shutting them out by the score 3-0. It looks like the Giants are starting to get their act together a little bit. They're 9-13 right now, while the Washington Nationals representing the NL East are 10-12. As you mentioned, a lot of these teams are starting to find themselves and trying to find some consistency to get it going. San Francisco, they still have that good lineup with Rafael Devers and your guy Matt Chapman, who should have been a third baseman for the Cubs a couple years ago, but that's neither hero there. But maybe if they could get some consistency with their offense to go with their very good starting pitching, I think San Francisco could cause some problems. But we still have a long way to go before we find out the true answer. As we say all the time in baseball, I think Memorial Day is the true answer of what you kind of get a feel of what your team can be going through the year, because it's a long 6-month process, and it takes a while for things to get going. But Memorial Day, I think we can get, as you said, that you can get a true identity of what your team is, because everything should be kinks should be worked out, and habits should be formed, and you get a true sense of what your team is and what they could be down the road.
Going to the schedule for this week in Major League Baseball. We talked about Detroit and Boston. They're finishing up their series right now. Like I said, Patriots Day, of course, after the Boston Marathon. Houston and Cleveland, they kick off their series. Cincinnati and Tampa. St. Louis and Miami. Atlanta and Washington. Baltimore and Kansas City. We talked about the Phillies and the Cubs starting their series tonight over at Wrigley. The Dodgers and Colorado, like we said, they're finishing that series of their 4-gamer. Toronto and the Angels. Toronto, they start continue their West Coast trip. And the A's go up north to face the Seattle Mariners starting tonight.
Other series that are starting tomorrow, the Milwaukee Brewers will travel to Detroit to take on the Tigers. The St. Louis Cardinals will face Miami Marlins in South Beach. The New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox, that's right, they'll face each other for the first time in 2026. This matchup will take place in Fenway Park, and you can see that first game tomorrow at 5:30 on TBS. Other series that will be starting tomorrow, the Minnesota Twins and the New York Mets from Citi Field. A big series for the Mets, because if they lose this series here, Carlos Mendoza could be sitting next to us with a pink slip and link card by the end of the week, but we shall see about that. Baltimore and Kansas City, Pittsburgh and Texas, San Diego at Colorado, and of course, the White Sox will take on Arizona, and the Los Angeles Dodgers will continue their road trip through their division. They'll face the hated San Francisco Giants. Those are the other series that will be starting tomorrow.
And your national television schedule, as it said, that first game, the Mets Red Sox series will be on TBS. Prime Video, you'll have I should say the Yankees and the Boston. Sorry about that. That's my bad. On TBS, of course, the second game of that series will also be on MLB Network and Prime Video on Wednesday. That's through the Yankees feed and such, and also a special. Also, the rubber match that series will be on Fox, on the big Fox network. They'll finish up that series and such, and also Pittsburgh and Texas, they kick off their series. Yeah, that's about it there. And yeah, that's the schedule for Thursday for this week in Major League Baseball.
All right, hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2's doors will open following this timeout right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. It's NFL draft time, LaKeena. The Bears on the go. GM Ryan Poles do with that 25th pick. Will he trade it? Will he trade up? Will he trade down? Will he keep it? So many scenarios, so little time. We'll break down those scenarios, and we'll get into the rest of the first round of the NFL draft. We have NBA playoffs to discuss and the Stanley Cup playoffs, which are, in my opinion, way more interesting in basketball. And we'll have a very special anniversary edition, sports edition of Old School TV Monday. That and a whole lot more. I'm Sid. That's LaKeena. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
Hey, it's your boy, the Superback, Sean Sierra, and be sure to follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, on Facebook, Instagram, and our Roku channel. You can find us at Sports Zone Chicago, and on Twitter, we are at Sports Zone Shy. Also, be sure to download our mobile app so you can take Sports Zone Chicago with you on the go.
How do you take care of your mind health?
For my mental health, I meditate in the mornings.
I have my dogs. They're the best.
I just find ways that help me just relax.
Finding things that make me happy, like being close to my family.
I meditate a lot and read books.
I have hobbies outside of the game. I'm able to switch off. I'm able to turn my brain off from the game of basketball.
Your mind health matters.
Your mind health matters.
It's a romance sport. What? It's a romance sport like that.
Your Marine Corps' way of life is to defend the American way of life. Every day, no matter where we serve, we take a stand for our nation, for each other, for us all. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Everybody in a work zone is someone's somebody.
This is my mom. She works for KDOT.
This is my dad.
This is my mom.
This is my daddy.
This is my sister.
This is my daddy.
This is my son, Scott. He was killed while working in a highway work zone. When you drive through a work zone, drive like a life depends on it. Because it does.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports on Monday extravaganza. This year, locked and loaded, and we're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. LaKeena McGee is she. Sidney Brown here is me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can find LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, X, and the IG.
We're going to kick off hour number 2 discussing the Chicago Bears in the upcoming 2026 NFL Draft. Our predictions on what the Bears should do with their first round pick. If you have any questions or comments regarding the Bears over the NFL, a couple of transactions went down over the weekend. We'll get into that as well. You want to discuss that for this half hour, you can definitely hit us up right now at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will give the up in the screen for you.
The NFL draft is this Thursday, and all the rumors in your windows and such. Could Jeremiah Love be able to form Notre Dame running back be able to be going to Arizona? Could some teams, go trade back? Could the Bears trade back for that 25th pick? And look, there's a lot of questions here that might be decided. Could AJ Brown be on the move on draft night? There's a lot of questions that could get answered before the draft, or maybe during the draft or after the draft. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see what transpires here on Thursday. We've talked to our buddy Eric Edholm from NFL.com. He says that he thinks that they could get, maybe get an old tackle, if you will. I'm talking about the Bears. They might, some people say they might trade back. Some people say they might do this and that. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see what Ryan Poles does with number 25th pick, because there are a lot of ways he could go with this.
Yeah, and we'll review some of the players that the Bears are eyeing on with their 25th pick coming up. But my prediction, and I've been standing on this hill until what happens on Thursday. I think that Ryan Poles will, quote unquote, take the best player available. I think you should answer that. Look, maybe Ryan Poles is calling you right now for some last minute advice. But I think Ryan Poles will, quote unquote, take the best player available and to see what happens. Now they can go, like you said, 3 ways. They can go Ozzy Trapillo. He's going to be out next year, if not all of next year, but pediatrical injury. Of course, they need a safety as well to go with free agent pickup Kobe Bryant for the world champion Seattle Seahawks. So there's a lot of options for Ryan Poles at number 25. But I think the wide receiver, I think he's going to hold off until the second round unless he really player that he wants with that 25th pick. Now, I think a couple of players that we discussed with Eric Edholm last week, but I'll bring it up again here. The safeties, Emmanuel McNeil Warren, he's a one safety out of Toledo. He's been climbing up high on draft boards, and of course, Dylan Thieneman, the safety out of Oregon. He's been high on people's draft lists as far as safeties are concerned. Of course, Caden Proctor is the offensive tackle from Alabama. He may be selected at higher than where the Bears are picking, but we should see what happens there. Caleb Lomu, the offensive tackle of Utah, he's on the Bears board right now. Akeem Mesidor, the edge rusher out of the University of Miami, he's a possibility. In offensive tackle Blake Miller out of Clemson, that's another player that the Bears may consider selected with that first round pick.
Yeah, I think there's, like I said, the Bears, it'll be interesting to see the Bears do because we know for years that Ryan Poles does a whole best player does, easy for me to say, best player available thing. But what if that best player available is a wide receiver? What if that best player available is a running back? I think it's one of those things where you just don't know what they're going to do, because you don't know what's going to happen ahead of you. There could be some teams that might trade up, some teams might trade back, and the guy that they want might not be there. So I can also see him perhaps maybe trading back with that pick and seeing what they do with that. So I know we talked about Dylan Thieneman from Oregon, the safety. I've seen a couple mock drafts. Some of the recent ones have the Bears taking him. Perhaps should he be available to kind of help out in the safety part, because they still don't have any safeties. Now they did exercise their option on Darnell Wright. So that's going to be interesting to see if the Bears decide to kind of go the O-line route, like that's been the buzz about. Now, do they get an edge rusher? We talked about a couple of guys the last couple of weeks, talking about edge rusher. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see what the Bears do with that 25th pick. Could he trade back, perhaps? Maybe get a couple of picks for the later rounds? We'll see, but it's going to be that's really going to be the wild card here as far as the Bears are concerned, because I think that's going to be kind of like the part where what will Poles do right there at 25.
All right. Speaking of those multiple second-round picks, here's a couple of names that you should keep your eyes on. We'll go by position here quickly. The Bears could also use an extra defensive back, Jamon McCoy, who missed all of this year due to a torn ACL. He's a ranked number 14 as far as defensive back out of Tennessee. Chris Johnson out of San Diego State could be another possibility. In Colton Hood out of Tennessee could also be another possibility at defensive back if should Ryan Poles go that route with that first-round pick or one of the two second round picks. You mentioned about a wide receiver, LaKeena, who the Bears could also select with that other second round pick. Here's some names to keep an eye on. Chris Bell out of Louisville, Malachi Fields out of Notre Dame, who's been getting a lot of love here locally over the last few days. Antonio Williams out of Clemson, Dejon Stribling out of Ole Miss, and of course Elijah Sarrett out of Indiana.
Yeah, that's I've seen a couple of those names, and like I said, the Bears will have, like I said, depending on what the other teams do ahead of them. The Bears they'll have their pick of guys who they want. The guys they want are there. So we're just to see like who's gonna be like there for the Bears to take. Will their guy be there by the time it is the Bears' turn to pick? Like I said, it's just still a lot of wild cards here for them and also for the Bears too. I feel like the Bears are going to be, TJ Parker, that's the rush I was talking about from Clemson. That's a name that a lot of people like for the Bears too. So like I said, it could go various spots for the Bears as well. But the Bears are going to be interesting to see what the Bears do with that 25th, because that's going to be the key here of what direction the Bears decide to do. They go old tackle, do they go edge rush? So the Bears like I said, they're in a good spot, pick wise. But like I said, I mean, could they perhaps maybe trade back, perhaps maybe get a couple of those extra mid-round picks? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, other names just to wrap up the Bears portion of the conversation to keep your eyes on. Defensive end Gabe Jacobs out of Illinois, Danny Dennis Sutton out of Penn State. Defensive tackles Caleb Banks out of Florida, Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech, and Dominique Orange out of Iowa State. And of course, the safety is Keontae Scott from Miami, AJ Halsey from LSU. So the Bears, as we said, they need with their first 4 picks in the top 50 in this year's draft. Those players that Ryan Poles selects, should he keep these picks without trading any of them, they need to be impact players. We talked about we talked about the need of edge rushers on this team. We talked about them with the need of safety. I think Ryan Poles will select at least one safety and one edge rusher with 2 of those first 4 picks in the top 50 of the draft. And the rest of those picks, if you could trade one of those second round picks, so be it. But the rest of those picks after the top 4 and in the top 50, the later rounds, they should be built for depth. And I think one of those picks will be a wide receiver. You don't need to select a wide receiver right away, in my opinion. The rest of those later round picks that they have, that you need to build for depth, because you're looking down the road not just for next year, but you got to pay a couple of guys potentially in the next 2 years. You mentioned about Darnell Wright, the offensive right tackle. He's going to be a free agent after 2026. Let's not forget about Roma Duza. He could be a free agent in a couple of years if he decides to stay healthy and step up. And of course, you got to pay Caleb Williams in a couple of years as well if he keeps improving his play, going upwards as we started to see last year. So Ryan Poles is not just thinking for right now, but he's thinking about the future as well.
Now going to the rest of the NFL draft, for the rest of the NFL, it won't be official yet, but it won't be till Thursday. But we allegedly know that the Raiders will take Fernando Mendoza from Indiana. Now after that's where it gets interesting. Number 2, the Jets get the number 2 pick. Averill Reese, so they go edge rusher. They have a lot of needs. So do they go with Averill Reese? Do they go with David Bailey? Who knows? I mean, they also need linebacking help as well. So we'll see what the Jets do. Arizona, we said that earlier. Jeremiah Love's getting some buzz that Arizona's interested in him. Although they could go tackle, maybe perhaps maybe they'll wait and take a quarterback Tennessee, it was another team got Robert Sala. We know he loves his defense, so I'm sure they'll go defense for the first round. Now the Giants, we'll tell you why the Giants have two top 14 picks. We'll tell you that in a second here, but you'll be to see with John Harbaugh what they decide to do. This new regime there. You got Cleveland, Washington. Then at 8, you got the Saints. Then you got the Kansas City Chiefs and the Giants. Like I said, the Giants got that second top 10 pick from Cincinnati after trading Dexter Lawrence. They're all pro defensive linemen to Cincinnati. And we'll see what the Giants do. Now they got 2 top 10 picks. We'll see what they do with that one. They got Miami, Dallas, Los Angeles, the Rams. They got that pick from Atlanta. Baltimore, we'll see what they can do, and also Tampa Bay, and of course the Jets from the pick from Indy. So this could be a lot of moving parts. Like I said, we just saw yesterday.
We'll start out with the New York Giants. Of course, Jeremiah Love's been getting a lot of love, as you mentioned, from Arizona. Of course, the Giants, we talked about it on the show for the last couple of weeks. And now with that first round pick due to that trade from the Cincinnati Bengals from over the weekend, John Harbaugh has some options. I think if they love Jeremiah Love, no pun intended, you can select with that number 5 pick, and you can select an edge rusher at number 10, assuming that Ruben Bain is not on the board by the time you get to pick number 10. You select him if you're the Giants. Like you said, John Harbaugh loves his defense. The Giants' defense was kind of last year due to their injuries on offense, and a whole lot of pressure was put on their defense, and it wasn't litter. So you desperately can't go wrong. The Giants definitely need playmakers on offense, and it's similar. A player like a Ruben Bain, the edge rusher of Miami, is there for you at number 10. You should take him. So the Giants are definitely, in my opinion, they control the draft at least.
Well, yeah, I think the Giants are, like I said, it's just to see what, like I said, they've got the pieces are there. They just got to mesh well. And like I said, you get an edge rusher, you get another, perhaps maybe a safety, which is what that's kind of like the plug in there with that safety now, especially with that Dexter Lawrence trade. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Giants do with those 2 top 10 picks that they now have. The rest of your first rounder, Detroit, at 17. You got Minnesota at 18. They need definitely some defensive help. They could go offense too. We'll see. Carolina, we've heard Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana. That's the name that's being thrown around as well. They definitely need wide receiver help. Dallas, that'll be just, they got that trade from Green Bay from the Micah Parsons trade last year. They get the Steelers, the Chargers. They've got, they got to add a few pieces. Philadelphia, could they go up because of AJ Brown? We'll see. Cleveland, of course, the Bears at 25. Buffalo, San Francisco, Houston, Kansas City. They got that trade from the Rams. The Miami from that trade from the Broncos. Then you got the Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks. We'll see what those 2 teams can do. You wonder, they could definitely use an O-line help. So yeah, I think the teams, all those teams will probably, like I said, some of this stuff changes. We'll see, but I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens on Thursday. Will there be some more pieces that will be moved?
Yeah. And that's $1 million question. We talk about it every year. Teams positioning themselves to perhaps look at certain players. They denied they were all hogwash. So, like you said, we'll see what happens with that. I'm going to talk about Philadelphia for a minute. I think we brought this up with Eric at home last week. You mentioned about the AJ Brown situation. Assuming that they trade him on June the 5 and select an offensive lineman or a defensive tackle. Remember, Philadelphia's problem was not defense last year. It was their offense, in particular how they handled Jalen Hurts, trying to keep him upright. But looking at this mock draft from the Athletic, they have with the 23rd pick, on top of the Athletic, they have Philadelphia selected Caden Proctor, the offensive tackle of Alabama, which is, I don't think it's a bad pick for Philadelphia, but serious if Caden Proctor is not a bad pick, but if you're Philadelphia, unless you see something in the the later round, unless you see that edge rush that you could get at 25, I would not select the. They'll use one.
Yeah, I think I think the whole AJ Brown thing, like I said, we know that we know various reports. Some reports have said that maybe it'll be the Patriots, maybe who knows, but there might be another team and might be other teams involved. They're saying it is the Patriots at least for right now. A lot could change between now and June 1st, but I think if you're Javi Rossman, we know that he could be a dealer. We've seen him do that before. So I'm wondering, like, could he maybe fielding other calls from some other teams, to see if they can get, maybe he can get another player or maybe another pick for next year's draft. Like I said, with Lane Johnson, perhaps he is coming back, but he might retire. So they do go O-line and such. So it's really going to just depend on what's going to be out there available. And so that's really going to be the kind of the key here for me, especially when it comes to the AJ Brown situation. Now the Lawrence trade, we'll expand on a little bit more now, with Lawrence going to Cincinnati. Now, remember, they got Jonathan Bernard, formerly of Minnesota, and they got a couple other defensive players that they signed too. Does this Lawrence trade make the Bengals a legit contender in the AFC North?
I think it does only if their quarterback Joe Burrow stays healthy. You saw it last year, LaKeena, when he was out, the Cincinnati Bengals struggled, especially on offense. I.e., look at that Chicago Bears game last year. Even though Joe Flacco nearly threw for over close to 500 yards, but when Joe Flacco is healthy, that Cincinnati team is unbeatable. And when he's not healthy, they're just as bad as anybody else. One of the 5 bottom worst teams in the league. So if Joe Burrow stays healthy, Cincinnati can be in contention. Plus, they had to make the move to cover up their backside for losing Trey Henderson to the Baltimore Ravens. So I think that was a nice pickup there. Dexter Lawrence will be motivated there. If he can stay healthy, I think that Cincinnati defense can improve. But for Cincinnati to go back to the playoffs, Joe Burrow has to stay healthy for a whole year. If he does, I think Cincinnati will be a contention. If not, all the other moves that they made up to this point will be all for naught.
Now, the Cowboys have made Brandon Aubrey the highest paid kicker in the NFL. He gets a 4-year, $28 million deal with $20 million guaranteed. So, we know he can make kicks and from about 50 plus yards and stuff. So definitely getting his money's worth there. And Trent Williams' situation with the 49ers have come into a conclusion. This was agreed to earlier this morning. He gets a $24.5 million deal for this year on a 2-year, $50 million deal that locks him in for 27 as well. He'll get $37 million guaranteed into next year. So, that's really, I think if you're Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, I think you're happy that saga is over at the very least.
Yeah, we all remember what happened last year. Trent Williams he's been hurt for the last couple of years, and all that money that was due to him with that contract extension from a couple of years ago. San Francisco has some work to do because they still up against the cap, just like another team I'm going to talk about in just a minute. But the way that San Francisco and John Lynch and their front office has really kept this team together and without losing any major stars, that's very impressive. But Trent Williams is still the anchor to the offensive line. We know about Christian McCaffrey. We know about George Kittle, who was hurt most of last season, and we know what Brock Purdy could do when he's healthy, especially with all the weapons around him that when they are healthy. So, San Francisco still could be one of the best teams in the NFC next year with Philadelphia, with the LA Rams. So this is a very important move for San Francisco. Let's see if they can live up to the expectations next year.
And remember too, with Mike, getting Mike Evans, I think that helps a lot. So it'll be good to see what happens with the 49ers now. Jimmy Garoppolo, of course, he's a free agent. The Rams, he was playing for the Rams. Well, didn't play for the Rams, but he signed with the Rams for the last couple of years. Now apparently he's contemplating retirement. This is what the NFL Network is saying, said on today. So you wonder, I guess he's not getting a lot of calls from teams to be their backup. He's 34, so you wonder, okay, what's going on here?
But let's just say if he goes ahead and retires for now, and I'm using air quotes here for now. You know this as well as I do, LaKeena. When training camp starts, usually is a couple of big injuries that happens every year, especially at the quarterback position. Whoever unfortunately has their star quarterback goes down for a while or out for the year. Trust me, he's going to get some calls. So I think that I'm not saying that he may be done for good. Who knows? But if a quarterback or two starts to go down during training camp or during the preseason or early in the regular season, and if he's still out there on the street, trust me, he's going to get some calls.
All right, so to be continued there. Now your NFL draft coverage from Pittsburgh. For Thursday night, the first round coverage will be on ABC, ESPN, and NFL Network. Remember, ESPN now owns a majority of NFL Network, so they're going to have three entities that'll be broadcasting the draft this year. Of course, it'll be from 7 to 10 Central Time, that's Chicago time. Also streaming on NFL Plus and ESPN Plus, as well as Fubo TV. Of course, you can also get ESPN's alternate cast will feature Pat McAfee and also Sirius XM NFL if you want to hear the audio version.
All right, you listen to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago City. LaKeena here with you. LaKeena, I want to transition over a little bit to the NBA playoffs. We'll start the basketball discussion here, and we'll continue with following this timeout. But overall, before we break down each and last one of these games, what did you think about the action from over the weekend? Me personally, I was kind of disappointed. I would say mixed bag at best, but I was kind of disappointed in a couple of games that I was really looking forward to watching. A couple of these games, especially, I'll give mine away. Especially the early games yesterday, I found myself turning after watching 2 minutes of it. You knew that what the results was going to be. I just thought that maybe these games would be competitive for a while. I'm talking about Philadelphia and Boston and OKC and Phoenix. I thought, it'll be a competitive for a while. I found myself disinterested. I had to turn for both those games as I'm watching 5 minutes of those games each.
Yeah, the Philadelphia Boston when I'm thinking, look, we knew that with no Embiid, I think it was going to be hard for Philly. Look, they'll be looking to win one game in that series. It looks like Boston sort of like it's on a mission, kind of out for revenge. 26 points for Jaylen Brown and 25 for Tatum.
Mm-hmm.
As they took care of business there. Now, as far as Phoenix, OKC, I mean, look, we all kind of figured that even, Phoenix, beating Golden State, okay, fine, but we know that OKC is at a different level. They want to repeat. So SGA, of course, we'll talk about SGA in a second here as he goes for another MVP. But yeah, Jalen Williams at 22. So again, not a big shocker there. Now, probably the more shocking one, I guess you want to call it a shocker, Orlando beating Detroit. Look, we know that Orlando gave Detroit a hard time. They split their season series. We knew that it was going to be, it make it a gentleman's sweep at best for Detroit, but they got to get it going here. I mean, 39 points for Cade Cunningham, Tobias Harris, 17 points. Jalen Duren only had 8. That's not going to work if you're trying to perhaps maybe look. We know the rumors going on with Orlando. Paul McCarroll, you give him credit for at least playing and such. I know he kind of let it slip that there's been some a little bit of interesting things happening there. I know he wants to extend it, but I think they're just postponing the interval. I think Detroit will take control of this series if Duran and other the other players on the back end help out Cunningham and Tobias Harris. The San Antonio, Portland, I mean, look, we kind of figured, David Robinson and Tim Duncan were there last night for that game. Wemby had 35. And also De'Aaron Fox had 17 and Sam Castle had 17 points apiece. So yeah, those games you kind of figured it was essentially the Orlando Detroit one. The other games kind of went as expected, so I really didn't pay attention too much to those games. So I was like, well, okay, all right, I kind of figured that.
Yeah. We'll discuss the Saturday results following the bottom of the hour timeout right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. LaKeena here with you as we talk NBA playoffs from over the weekend. Starting with that Orlando-Detroit game, even though Orlando shot the ball terribly from three-point range at a 29% clip, they were making their shots in the first half, being aggressive. You mentioned about Pablo Banchero. He really came out on the mission, scoring 23 points in 37 minutes of action, including 8 of 15 overall, 2 for 4 from downtown. Wendell Carter Jr., former Bull, does that name ring a bell to you Bulls fans? he had a very good game as well. 17 points, 7 rebounds, and five assists. You mentioned on the flip side for the Detroit Pistons, they got nothing from their bench. That has to change in game 2. I know Orlando's riding high off that momentum from them winning that play-in game last Friday at home against Charlotte, blowing them out by 30. But Orlando kept up their momentum yesterday. They were very good defensively, and they never wait from their gameplay offensively. So for Detroit, as you mentioned, they got to get Jalen Durant going. Tobias Harris, he tried, but outside of Kate Cunningham, no one else really contributed offensively. So the Pistons is got to be a team game concept. I know Duncan Robinson had 9. Amin Thompson's brother, Stuart Thompson, he only had 8 points there. That's not going to cut it either. So outside of Kate Cunningham and Tobias, and that's going to be for the Detroit Pistons to win this series. I think they can win the next 4 games to close out this series. But this series goes 6, or heaven forbid, if you're a Pistons fan, 7. There's a barring any major injuries. There's a problem here. So hopefully that JB Bickerstaff will take a look at the film, make some adjustments, which I think they will tomorrow night.
Now, as far as like I said, the Portland, San Antonio, like I said, you kind of figured that you kind of figured, like I said, especially with David Robinson and Tim Duncan there. So you got to think that maybe like I said, we'll see what happens with that one. But look, I mean, the Detroit one, I think is, like I said, they got to get it together because they don't want to look that they need to. Hopefully, they get a couple of days off and hopefully, Coach Bickerstaff look at the film and then just get Durant involved in that series, because like I said, if Orlando somehow wins on Wednesday, that's the game 2. I mean, I think Detroit's going to be in trouble here. So you better win this game, even the series, and see if they can if you can take control of the series.
Yeah, and you mentioned about Oklahoma City Thunder. They've been on a roll ever since SGA came back from his injury a couple of months ago. You mentioned that the way that they played yesterday, they're proving to making a statement to wrapping up on that Celtics 76ers game 1. Philadelphia missed a lot of closest shots, especially early. They also turned the ball over 15 times, which led to Boston's 22-point outburst off of Philadelphia's turnovers. You mentioned about Jason Tatum. Looks like he's starting to work his way back into the lineup. Peyton Pritchard, who filled in for him nicely in the starting lineup during the regular season, he's back to coming off the bench, providing as much needed scoring that the Celtics team is needed. I know our guy Nikolai Vucevic, former Bull, he didn't do too much on the score sheet yesterday, but I think his value is going to. The Celtics put out an all clinic yesterday, and they shot the 3 ball well. So Philadelphia may get a game in this series, but I think this is Boston's series to wrap up early, as you mentioned in the gentleman sweep. And should Boston win this series, they'll face the winner of the Knicks-Hawks series. We'll talk about the Knicks and the Hawks coming up after the timeout, but Boston, just like OKC, put out a clinic for the ages yesterday against an inferior team.
And we'll talk more about that series and the other series from Saturday coming up next, as well as the NHL, as some winners expected, the others not so much. And also, too, of course, we'll do a little bit of golf as Matt Fitzpatrick gets another RBC Heritage Crown. And what about the live golfers? What are they going to do? And also, too, some sports media news, a double-digit dose of old school TV Monday. Continuing with the theme here with the draft coming up, and also to a special anniversary involving the Bulls, who, they have some names that they want to talk to for their front office positions. We'll have that and so much more. LaKeena, McGee, City Brown, Second City Sports, on Sports Zone Chicago Sports Purple We Step It coming up right after this.
Poof!
Hey, it's your boy, the Superback, Sean Sierra, and be sure to follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, on Facebook, Instagram, and our Roku channel. You can find us at Sports Zone Chicago, and on Twitter, we are at Sports Zone Chi. Also, be sure to download our mobile app so you can take Sports Zone Chicago with you on the go.
Got it done here. Ouch! And we're gonna make sure you lit this time. Ouch! You're not gonna get me this time.
Ow, Manny!
Whoops! Let's try an easy one.
Every day, we take steps to keep the people we love safe, but some health risks are easy to miss. Ticks hiding in the yard can spread germs, like the ones that cause Lyme disease. Mice searching for food can spread bacteria that makes us sick. Mosquitoes lay eggs in standing water and can spread West Nile virus and more. Cockroaches are drawn to water in the home, leaving behind allergens that can trigger asthma attacks. Common pests can threaten our health. Learn how to protect your family at pestworld.org.
Hey, this is Corey McGee, and I listen to Sean and Maya on the morning show.
Welcome back to Second City Sports on this Monday extravaganza. This year, locked and loaded, and we're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid the Kid is me. LaKeena McGee is she. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You follow LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, X, and the IG.
This is our sports potpourri, saving this our last break of the show for today. So if you have any last minute questions or comments of any of the topics we discussed thus far in today's show, you got to hit us up, not now, but right now when you have a chance before we go off the air in less than a half hour from now. You can definitely hit us up right now at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. LaKeena will get the up on the screen for you.
All right, folks. Now the rest of the matchups for the NBA playoffs over the weekend on Saturday, and you know, like I said, I mean, this is sort of, I mean, how do I say this? It kind of went as we expected. I mean, look, I'll be honest, I didn't watch a lot of these games because it kind of went as I figured that it would. Now the Cleveland Toronto game, I mean, you know, I think look, Donovan Mitchell had 32 points. RJ Barrett had 24 for the Raptors. So, look, the Raptors stayed with them for a little bit, but unfortunately, Cleveland was just a better team. The Denver, Minnesota, look, it was back and forth for a little bit. You know, Minnesota had control for the first quarter and a half, but Denver got into gear. Excuse me. Nikola Jokic had 25. Murray had 30. And on the flip side, though, for the T-Wolves, 22 points for, you know, Ant, Anthony Edwards, 16 points each for Jaden McDaniels and Julius Randle, who could do more, I feel like. Rudy Gobert, DiVincenzo, 14 points for Ayo Dosunmu. Glad he's getting a chance to have a little bit some playoff experience as well. Like I said, Minnesota, we said in our preview show for the playoffs, Minnesota can win that series, but I think they need to do more from guys like Randall and Gobert and some of the other guys off the bench, because I think, like I said, I think Minnesota it's right there with them, and I really think they could win that. They can win that series if the supporting cast can help them out. And you know, it's gonna be interesting. No. I just want to finish this point that, like I said, like I said, Minnesota could definitely win this series, but the supporting guys got to help out because we know he's not 100%.
Yeah, I watched the majority of that game on last Saturday, and Denver, they were in trouble, especially in that first half. Aaron Gordon's in foul trouble. A couple other guys were in foul trouble as well. You mentioned about Anthony Edwards. He took over the game early. And Dante DiVincenzo, you mentioned about another supporting cast member that helped out in that first half. He had a couple of big three-point shots in that first half. I thought that Minnesota had control of the game through the majority of the game, but in that fourth quarter, Denver found a way to win a ball game. You mentioned like Nikolai Jokic took over. Also, too, Peyton Watson hit a couple of big shots. Jamal Murray stepped up his game as well. So, with those championship teams like Denver, in those moments that they've been there before, they know what to do in crucial situations. You mentioned on the flip side for Minnesota, Julius Randle. I thought he could have did a little bit more, but he was in foul trouble early. I Sumo in his first playoff game in the Minnesota Timberwolves uniform, he did very well, and he, as you mentioned, on the flip side from outside of Anthony Edwards. But I think it's going to be interesting to see in Game 2 how will the Denver Nuggets defend Ant-Man. Will they trap him at half court, or will they double team him as soon as he gets the ball in the post? We shall see. And the Nas Reed and Jaden McDaniels gonna have to step up big time to have a big performance coming up on Game 2 tonight, I should say.
Yeah, I think that's really going to be the key here. If their folks are going to be going to have to get it going here. Perhaps, like I said, I think Minnesota team, I think they're capable of doing it. But like you said, it's going to have to take guys because look, we know that now that Anthony Edwards is 100%. So the other guys got to step up if Denver if they want to challenge Denver in this series. Now, the Knicks Atlanta series, Jalen Brunson had 28. And look, people thought that this would be the series that was going to give the Knicks trouble. At least so far, it looked like it was going to be the case. But by the second half, they kicked it into gear. Brunson, like I said, had 28, 25 from Cat. OG Anunoby had 18 for the Knicks. On the flip side for Atlanta, 26 for CJ McCollum and Jalen Johnson had 23. 19 points for Akuagu, and just too many big shots late for the Knicks as they take Game 1 of this series.
Yeah, and that was basically the story in Game 1. The Knicks primetime players came out to play. You mentioned about Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson, both scoring 25 and 28 points each. The Atlanta Hawks, outside of Jonathan Kuminga, who scored 8 points, you got nothing else from their bench. It was CJ McCollum's show. It was Alexander Walker's show with 17, and Jalen Johnson had 23. But outside of the starting five for Atlanta, no one outside of Kuminga really got any contributions from them in terms of scoring. So that has to improve in Game 2, just like we talked about with the Minnesota Timberwolves just a moment ago. For the New York Knicks, but for Atlanta to steal Game 2, you got to have 2 or 3 guys with multiple performances in terms of scoring coming off your bench if they want to steal Game 2 at MSG.
Now, as far as the other series that started on Saturday, and this was in the Western Conference, the Bears beat Houston. No KD, though, by the way, 107-98. And it was a Luke Kennard show, 27 points, a playoff career high. LeBron had 19 points, so DeAndre Ayton. Oh, yeah, there he is. He had a double-double. He had 11 boards as well. Talk about Ayton. On the flip side for Houston, Jabari Smith Jr. had 16. Alpero Sagun had 19. And Almond Thompson and Reed Shepard each had 17 points apiece. But look, I think, you give Houston credit for sticking with the Lakers with no KD. But yeah, it was a Luke Kennard show. And look, I mean, I know that they've shown that they can actually play well without Luka and Austin Reeves. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Now, look, whatever happens after the season, I know there's been reports about Jeannie Buss wanting to perhaps maybe let LeBron walk and have a build around Luka, but that's kind of like you got to worry about that after that. But at least for right now, Lakers have actually looked pretty good on Saturday.
Excuse me. I know it's just one game, LaKeena. I know it's just one game, but follow me here. Can we call Lakers GM Rob Pelinka a genius? I'm using air quotes here. The reason why I say that is because Luke Kennard, you mentioned it was his show, and he scored 27 points to lead the Lakers last Saturday. including 5 for 5 from downtown. And we questioned that doing. You need some other defensive help in terms of in the paint, due to like a performance from DeAndre Ayton, who actually showed up last Saturday in the playoffs. But as of right now, Lakers GM Rob Pelinka looks like a genius. For that trade for Luke Kennard, it paid dividends on Saturday. Let's see if it can pay off without Austin Reeves. But LeBron James, you saw him being that quote-unquote third guy. He had 19 points and 13 assists to 8 rebounds, so he nearly scored a triple-double. And that's, as we talked about for the last few weeks, heading down this home stretch of the regular season. That's LeBron James's role, 35 points and 28 points and take over games like he did in his younger days as a Cleveland Cavalier. That's just not going to happen at a man his age at 41. You like that all 5 members of the starting lineup for the Lakers contributed. Rui Hachimura had 14. DeAndre Ayton, as I mentioned, he contributed with 19. Mike with 27. So, even though the Lakers did not get that much contribution scoring wise from the bench, all 4 of the rest of this the stars helped out LeBron James from start to finish.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see if the Lakers can keep it going. Now, going to your schedule for this week in the NBA playoffs. Now, tonight's games, all these games are going to be on NBC and Peacock. Well, the NBC family of networks, if you will. All these games are going to be on Peacock. NBCSN will have game 2 of the Raptors and the Cavs. That'll be at 6 o'clock. NBC, you're back in the playoff game, and also on Peacock as well. You got the game 2 of Atlanta and the Knicks, and Minnesota and Denver. Game 2 of that series will be late at 9:30 on NBC and Peacock.
All right, your schedule for Tuesday are as follows. These games will be on NBC. At 6 o'clock on NBCSN and Peacock will be the game 2 of the Celtics 76ers series at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. On the big NBC network tomorrow, these are game 2s first in the Western Conference first round between Portland and San Antonio. San Antonio leads that series 1-9. That's at 7 o'clock tomorrow on NBC, followed by game 2 of the Rockets Lakers. Game 2 of that series, the Lakers lead that series 1-9. That's at 9:30 p.m. on NBC. Hopefully, Kevin Durant, if you're a Rockets fan, will return for that one. If not, it could be trouble once again. But that's your schedule for Tuesday.
Wednesday, both these games on ESPN. You got game 2 of Orlando and Detroit. We'll see if Detroit can get it together. And Phoenix, we'll see if they can muster up a fight against OKC at 8:30 on ESPN in game 2 of that series.
And your schedule for Thursday looks like this. All these games, 3 of these games will be on Amazon Prime, starting with game 3 of the Atlanta Hawks New York Knicks series live from Atlanta. That's at 6 p.m. on Thursday on the Amazon Prime, followed by game 3 of Raptors Cavaliers from the Eastern Conference first round. That game will take place in Toronto. That's at 7 o'clock on Thursday, followed by different Nuggets and Minnesota Timberwolves game 3, which the scene shifts to Minneapolis. They'll be at the Target Center. That's at 8:30 p.m. That's game 3 of that series. And that can also be seen on Amazon Prime. That's your schedule for the NBA playoffs for this upcoming week.
You listen to Second City Sports on Sports Social Chicago. LaKeena, McGee, City Brown with you. Let's do that hockey, Sid, as the Stanley Cup playoffs commence this weekend. Yes. We'll do which are much more entertaining than the NBA playoffs, we were just saying. But on yesterday's games, game 1, the Western Conference, the Kings and Avs. The Avs beat the Kings 2-1. Montreal needed overtime, but it was an overtime thriller as they beat the Lightning 4-3. Congrats to Buffalo. They get their first win in playoffs win in 11 years. They beat Boston 4-3. Tate Thompson had 2 goals and an assist in that one. And shout out to the Buffalo Bills O-line for supporting the team. They were driving the Zamboni there. That was pretty cute. And also Utah, they put up a fight in their first time in the playoffs as a franchise, but Vegas got the best of them 4-2 in that one.
All right, a couple of observations here from yesterday's games. The LA Kings, we all know they like to play a tight defensive game. They did that for the majority of the game, but it was Colorado's um, uh, uh, goal scoring that saved the day for them in a timely fashion. As far as that game's concerned, John Cooper, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning, threw his team under the bus, in my opinion, and rightfully so for the way they played yesterday. When you have four crucial penalties, we have any type of silly penalties in the playoffs that goes is scrutinized to the 10th degree, and the Montreal Canadiens took advantage of it. I told you Montreal will give Tampa a series, and they gave them a game yesterday, converting on 3 of their 5 power play opportunities, including the game winner in overtime as the Canadiens still game 1 for Tampa. Let's see if Tampa how they will respond in game 2. Buffalo, I did watch that the entire game on ESPN. LaKeena, shouts out to them. They showed the national anthem, and they showed the family of Rick Jenner, the late great Rick Jenner, of course, the former longtime voice of TV and radio for the Buffalo Sabres. His family was out there beating the drum. Most of these teams have to ring a bell or thumbs up to the Sabres organization for that. But you mentioned by Tage Thompson helping Buffalo's with the 2 of those 4 goals in that third period. Total meltdown for the Boston Bruins. We all know that they can score with the best of them, but they're very good defensively. But that third period is an all-time collapse. I'm not saying they cannot recover, but the Bruins don't win game 2. I think they're in a whole lot of trouble, especially the way that Buffalo kept at it with them yesterday. This is going to be a hard physical series, and Buffalo did not back down obviously yesterday. Like, even though they were down 2-0 in the game, they did not back down, so they kept at it, and their hard work in their efforts paid off. And with the Golden Knights and the Utah Mammoth, Utah took control of that game the first half of the game, but Vegas just took a playbook out of the Buffalo Sabres. They kept at it, and saved their best for last of scoring those goals in the third period. So congratulations to all the Reds from yesterday's games. They were very much entertaining, much more entertaining than yesterday's NBA playoff action overall.
Yeah, well, shout out to Scott Wedgwood, the goalie for the Avs. He had 24 assists in that game, and Teddy Panarin had the power play goal late in the third. That they tried to talk about the Kings, but for the Kings, but unfortunately the Avs, thanks to Wedgwood to control that game. And you're off to Savlovsky from the Canadiens. He becomes the youngest at only 22 years old, the second youngest skater in NHL history with a hat trick and an overtime game winner. He had the game winner in overtime there in the same game. Of course, our Eddie Olczyk did it back in 1988. He was just about 22 years old as well. He was the youngest. And also the Sabres, they become the first team in NHL history to win in regulation time after trailing by 2 or more goals to 0 with 8 or less minutes left in the game. So a nice comeback win for the Sabres. In that one, Vegas, you give Utah credit for at least making it a game. Of course, not bad for a couple of first-timers, but 3 goals, unanswered goals. Nick Dowd had a couple of those goals for the Knights, and that was all she wrote there.
All right. Your results are from Saturday's day 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs were as resulted. Your Carolina Hurricanes with a 2-0 shutout over the Ottawa Senators. 3 seconds into the game, LaKeena, Brady Tkachuk, Jordan Stahl going at it for 2 seconds. There's a couple punches. You take one, I take one. We're both going in the penalty box, and off we go. I don't know if you saw that, but
yes, I did.
Yours truly was loving it. And we all know that your Carolina. Yeah, we all know that you like the Carolina Hurricanes for some reason. We'll let you explain that at a different time, perhaps on the next show. But the Hurricanes have been knocking on the door against the Stanley Cup finals for the last few years. They just haven't broken through yet. Excuse my bad English if there is one. But maybe this is the year they'll break through to represent the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup finals. We shall see. But they got off to a nice start on Saturday with a 2-0 win. It was a very physical game. He had that fight to set the tone for that series. 3 seconds in. Ottawa, we know about the controversy with them on and off the ice all year long, but somehow they found their way into the playoffs. Carolina, they hung in there tough, took control late in that second period, got the 2-0 shutout win. This is going to be an exciting series, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, yeah, like I said, the only reason why I'm a big Carolina fan is because of Brenda Moore. I mean, I was, he was one of my favorite players growing up. So that was more for him and such, for the team. And the team itself is actually really good too. So we'll see. Like I said, I saw that fight, and that was just hilarious. And it was just they're old friends, so you gotta take that, take a couple of punches throw, like we'll go to the penalty box, it's all good. But yeah, unfortunately though, look, Frederick Anderson was sitting on his head for the Hurricanes. He's one of the best goalies in the league. So he showed you why in that first game. So Ottawa better get together because this could be a short series for them. Now, Minnesota, it was all Minnesota here, 6-1 over Dallas. And look, we said Minnesota could definitely challenge Dallas when these matchups came about. So Minnesota got the edge there. And the Battle of Pennsylvania, and look, at least in this one there were no punches for, because we know these two teams don't like each other. Their history goes back years, but
exactly.
Philadelphia got the best of Pittsburgh in this game, 3-2. And look, I think Malkin had a goal, but Porter Matone had a great goal late in the third quarter, third period, I should say, that kind of sealed that win for the Flyers. And look, we both got this series going 7, but I think, look, I picked the Flyers. I think you picked the Penguins, and it'll be interesting to see who will be right for this one.
Yeah, that Flyers team is very good, LaKeena. I know they've been struggling the last few years, but that's a good young bunch that finally got their act together. And they showed what they were worth last Saturday, still in game 1 on the road at Pittsburgh. I think, like you said, it's still going to be a long series. And so I think yeah, expect some sparks to fly at some point in this series. Let's see if Pittsburgh will tighten things up. Minnesota series, I picked Minnesota in an upset. Dallas has been knocking at the door to get back to the Stanley Cup final ever since the COVID year 6 years ago. They just haven't been able to get over that hump once again. But the Minnesota Wild surprisingly has had a good year. I think only one time in the last 8 years they've gotten out the first round. I'm talking about Minnesota. So a nice start for them, stealing game 1 from Dallas on the road. We'll see what happens in that series. I picked Minnesota in an upset. We'll see what happens there. We talked about Carolina and Ottawa there. I think that's going to be more physical as that series goes along. So these NHL Stanley Cup players are off to a hot start, in my opinion.
Yes, they have, and hopefully we'll get even more action this week, especially starting tonight. Now, speaking of that Philadelphia-Pittsburgh series, game 2 of that series will be on ESPN. All these games tonight are on ESPN or ESPN2. Game 2 of the Ottawa-Carolina series, that'll be at 6:30 on ESPN2. Minnesota and Dallas will be at 8:30, the late game on ESPN. And the first game of Anaheim-Edmonton, that'll be on ESPN2 at 9 o'clock. So, that should be we'll see if Anaheim can pull off the upset against Edmonton. But that is scheduled for Monday, for tonight.
Yeah, for tomorrow, Tuesday, your schedule looks like this for the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Bruins, Sabres, game 2, 6:30 p.m. on ESPN. The Sabres lead that series 1-0. At 8:30 p.m. on ESPN2, this is for Tuesday, folks. Game 2 of the Utah-Vegas Golden Knights series. Vegas leads that series 1-0. At 9 o'clock on the big ESPN network, it's Los Angeles and Colorado in game 2 of that series. Colorado leads that best of 7 series 1-9. That's your Stanley Cup playoff schedule for Tuesday.
And your schedule for Wednesday, all these games are going to be on TNT, True TV, and also streaming on HBO Max. Game 3 of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Game 3 of Dallas and Minnesota. And also Anaheim and Edmonton, game 2 of that series. So a triple header, if you will. Oh, also, actually, the third game, Anaheim and Edmonton, will be on TBS. So these all games will be on Turner, Warner Bros. Discovery, however you want to call them. But those 3 games will be on those networks on Wednesday.
Also, your schedule for Thursday, all 3 of these games will be seen on TNT, True TV, and streamed on HBO Max. Game 3 of the Buffalo-Boston series, the scene now shifts to Boston for game 3 of that series. That's at 6 p.m. At 6:30, game 3 of your Carolina Hurricanes and Ottawa Senators, the scene will shift to north of the border in Ottawa, excuse me, in Canada. And on Thursday at 9 p.m., game 3 of the Kings Avalanche series, that scene will shift to live.
All right, and that is your schedule for this week in the NHL playoffs or slash Stanley Cup playoffs. You listen to Second City Sports on Sports Chicago. LaKeena, McGee sitting around with you. A couple of notes here before we go into our double dose of old school TV Monday. Shout out to Matthew Fitzpatrick. He wins his second RBC Heritage Open, the second time in 3 years, outdueling Scotty Scheffler in a playoff. And he actually had a nice thing to say about, because it kind of felt like a Ryder Cup type atmosphere, if you guys know what I'm talking about. He said there was a lot of USA chants. You usually don't see those outside of the Ryder Cup. So, but look, Matt Fitzpatrick, always a classy guy. Took it all in stride and said, "Hey, look, it's fine."
Mm-hmm.
And he actually did a little thing afterwards, like, "Can y'all hear me now?" After he sunk that putt to that birdie putt to seal that playoff win. But yeah, it was fun. It was exciting, and look, I kind of feel like, I kind of feel like he took the high road, so good for him.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me now, LaKeena? My audio cut out. Your audio cut out for a second.
Yeah, I'm here.
Sorry, your audio cut out for a second. I missed your last point on what you were saying about that event from yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, Fitzpatrick, of course, good on him for taking kind of like the high road and say, you know what, hey, it happens. Look, look, they were cheering for him because, Scheffler because he's from the U.S. So okay, fine. But look, he took the high road and then he won, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's nothing wrong with great sportsmanship. Like you say, it's a classy thing to do. And sometimes, when things don't go your way, you got to learn your lesson. Take the L, as the kids would say. Take the high road and learn your lesson. Move on. That's the game of life. It's happened to all of us, including your children. So, life is going to help you in some way sometimes. So things end up working out sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. So, you got to take the bull by the horns, take it to the chin, and move on.
Well, yeah, and of course, because the Fitzpatrick, he ended up winning it, so he was actually kind of was able to shut the crowd up, if you will. So, but look, Scheffler ended up winning like $2.2 million for finishing in second place, so I don't think he's crying too much about it. So, but yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what goes on here so he's not crying too much, so I think he's doing
okay. You're listening to Second City Sports on Chicago City. LaKeena here with you. Before we close it out with Old School TV Monday, I know you have a couple of nuggets from the sports media world. Please share with us and the rest of the class.
Yeah, there were some people that were making a big deal about these games. We talked about it a little bit with our NBA playoff panel on Friday that a lot of these games you're not going to be you can't watch them locally anymore. So back in the day you could always watch on your local NBC Sports, whatever insert city here affiliate. Now that's not going to be the case. You got to watch nationally. That goes for both the NBA and the NHL playoffs. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what fans decide here. Like I said, you got the cord cutters, you got all this other stuff. So of course, this is what the world we're living in 2026, unfortunately.
And with the longer commercial breaks, especially in the NBA playoffs, most of these games will not, unless it's a real blowout, they won't end on time. So you had to jump to this streaming service or jump to that channel to get the beginning of your game. That's what was so great about having at least through the talking about the NBA through the last before this one, the last two NBA TV contracts previously. At least they had the local the teams that were in the playoffs at least have the first round broadcast also with the option of broadcasting locally. So like in Chicago, you would have Neil Funk back then and Stacey King. during the first round series for the Bulls. If you didn't like the national broadcast, you could turn to at that time CSN. But now, like you said, that's not the case. But LaKeena, remember, I know we're going to talk about this. They'll probably need to be brought up again in a minute. But remember back in the day, through the 80s and 90s and through the early 2000s before the All-Star game went to TNT. You could get the NBA playoffs. It was just on the weekends on CBS in the 80s, NBC in the 90s and early 2000s. But during the week, it was on TBS and TNT. But during the week, if you were in that your team was playing that home market, you can get those teams games. And your team advanced through the conference finals. At least the first couple of games were in your local regional sports network through Memorial Day weekend before NBC and CBS took over full time after Memorial Day. So though I know those days have been long gone years ago, but I kind of miss those days. As we say all the time, people want and need options, and the few options that people have, the more people are becoming frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, I get what those folks are saying, but like, you got a lot of cord cutters. That's basically why they're doing this. And look, you've got ESPN Unlimited, you got Peacock, you got Prime now. And look, if you remember, I remember back in the day where you couldn't watch, if you're hosting, your team's hosting those playoff games, you couldn't get it, in the national feed. You had to watch the local feed. So it's one of those things where you're just, so it's one of those days where it's just like, you're just kind of stuck on what you can do here. But I think folks just got to try to adapt, because unfortunately, look, you've done it with the NFL. You did it this season with the NBA now being on Prime. They had very high numbers, so folks are watching. So, but folks are bitching and complain about it. So you're watching. So what are you complaining for?
And just to wrap up in this discussion, I know these networks will pay a whole lot of money to broadcast these games. I know they're going to get every cent out of it. And like you said, we just had to adapt to the new world that we living in as far as viewing these sporting events. So you just got to get used to the times and adjust.
Going to be very interesting to see what happens with that. One more sports media news before we go to the real quick. Go to Old School TV Monday. I know you guys have heard about. Well, we'll go into this for Christine for KXRB when she comes back with us on Friday. But the Live Golf, of course, we heard the rumors about. Oh, is it folding? Is it this or is it that? Look, they played in Mexico City. John Rahm has made tens of millions of dollars on Live. I mean, Bryson DeChambeau, I know he withdrew he was having discomfort in his wrist. It might be because the course is yucky and he probably wanted to save himself the embarrassment. I think that's probably what happened, but I never want to question his injuries. But yeah, I mean, look, they'll have places to go. They can go back to the tour. I'm sure the tour is going to make them, beg and plead, however you want to say it, for them to come back like they had to do with Koepka and a few others. But I don't know. I mean, you think about the other guys, just kind of the lower tier guys that went for the money so I can get some money. But now they're not going to. If they basically, Scott O'Neill who the president just basically said, hey, look, we're good for the rest of the season. After that, I do the shrugs, boy, folks who are listening to this. I'm doing the shrugs thing. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, we all know the money is the bottom line here. If you don't have a long sustained plan, a stable plan going forward, like I said, folks are going to leave. And I know some people, we talked about this before, eventually it's going to take over the PGA. The PGA got all those sponsors behind them, and they can have all that corporate money backing them up. And plus, with the good TV ratings, we saw what the Masters did over the last weekend. So if Liv could even get half of it, I think they'll be in long-term shape. But you got to see how things go for an extended period of time to see if it's going to have sustained success. If it does, then it'll be a legitimate competition to the PGA. But if not, it's going to fold just like any other league. So this may be what we're watching here, but we'll see what happens.
All right, let's to Second City Sports on Sports Chicago. LaKeena McGee, Steve Brown with you. We got a double dose of Old School TV Monday today. Both are sports related. One will be about the NFL draft and how has it evolved in the coverage coming up, starting Thursdays. But Sid, you got a more localized first part of the Old School TV Monday for this week.
Yeah, I know we're time per minute, but I'll get right to it. 40 years to go today. Sunday afternoon, April 20th, 1986. It was game 2 between the Boston Celtics and the Chicago Bulls in game 2 of the 1986 first round of the NBA playoffs. Of course, yes, that was the year that the Boston Celtics won the NBA title. But for one day, they took a back seat to a second-year player named Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Of course, he missed 64 games that year in his second year due to a foot injury. He returned to play in the last 15 games of that season. Of course, in game one, a couple of days before, he scored then a career high 49. Of course, in game two, everybody watching on CBS, Dick Stockton, the late great Tommy Heinsohn, and Pat O'Brien patrolling the sidelines. Jordan went off, and this record still holds on to this day, scoring 63 points, including tying the game with 2 free throws going into overtime. Of course, the Boston Celtics would hang on to win that game in overtime, 135-131. LaKeena, I'm thinking about the rule changes that we talk about all the time, especially in the game of basketball. Remember, Jordan got fouled by Kevin McHale at the end of regulation behind the three-point line. If we had today's rules back then, we would have had opportunity to make 3 free throws. If Jordan would have made 3 free throws, if we had the rules today back then, the Bulls would have stole game 2 in Boston Garden, but it was not to be. The Celtics took over in overtime. They won the game by 4 points, as we mentioned. Of course, Larry Bird, paraphrasing here and quoting him, as he said to the media following that game, it was God in basketball shoes. That was not Michael Jordan. It was God in basketball shoes. Of course, he talked about it ad nauseum during the documentary Last Stands back in 2020. Of course, everybody and their mama guarded Michael Jordan from the Boston Celtics, and Jordan scored on all of them. So it was an all-time great performance. That playoff high with Michael Jordan, 63 points, still stands. Of course, there's a few people that came close. Charles Barkley, 94 with Phoenix and against Golden State in Game 3 with 56. Allen Iverson in Game 5 of that famous Toronto series in 2001, he had 56. Donovan Mitchell and I believe Jamal Murray in the bubble in 2020 had 57 and 56 respectively. So it's been some guys that have been knocking on the door these last few years, especially with the game that's been evolving to a global game today. I'm surprised that this record has stood for the last 40 years. I still keep saying that at some point this record will be broken, but as of right now, if you're Michael Jeffrey Jordan, you're smiling and say, yes, that record still stands 40 years later.
Yeah, the way it's kind of set up is that with the way I'll make this quick, but yeah, the way it was set up is like, back in the day where he probably could have scored more points, had it been by today's rules. So 63 points, of course. The late great Orlando Warriors had 24, and that was based. I think Charles only had 10, and that was all for that. And I think we saw kind of like the start of the greatest from MJ. So that part of that was that was a big part of that. It was a losing effort, but I think that was really what kind of stood out in that performance and such. Of course, Boston went on to win. It was a bbest of 5 back then. They went on to win that game and the series. Of course, they would go on to win the championship, beating Houston, who upset the Lakers. But it's going to be interesting though that this performance still talked about a lot. You can watch the game. The full game's on YouTube, so you can check that out after you watch us. So it's all kind of right there.
And a couple other nuggets to hit on. LaKeena, you mentioned about the late great Orlando Warriors being the second leading scorer with 24. The late great Bill Walton was on that team. He shot 4 of 8. Future Chicago Bull Sam Vincent, he did not play in this game, but he was a rookie backup point guard. He was a third stringer, I believe. He was on the 86 Celtics team. And on the flip side for the Bulls, Hall of Famer George Gervin, that was his. Remember, he filled in for Michael Jordan that year in 85-86. He played 5 minutes in that game, committed 1 foul, and made 1 assist. Your starting point guard for Chicago was Kyle Macy, who played 28 minutes in that game. And, of course, John Paxson, who replaced Michael Jordan on the roster earlier that year after Jordan got injured. He played 32 minutes in that game. He had 1 for 3 shooting, made 2 free throws.
Yeah, the late, great Kyle Macy, of course, who won a national championship at Kentucky in 1978. A future Hall of Fame coach who also played, future Hall of Fame who also played in that squad, Rick Carlisle. He played 33 minutes and was the only guy on the Celtics squad not to score, who didn't score that one. He played 3 minutes. Casey Jones, put him in for like 3 minutes. He didn't score, but Robert Parrish had 13 points. Danny Ainge had 24. 27 points for Kevin McHale. I still feel he's very underrated, but that's a different conversation. We don't got time for that. But and also great DJ Dennis Johnson had 15 points there too. There was a lot of scoring all over the place.
Yes.
So it ended up being a very entertaining game, not just for Jordan's performance, but also the game as a whole was really good.
Yeah, so as LaKeena said, check it out. The full game on YouTube. Now, part 2 for Old School TV Monday. Your thoughts about the NFL draft has television coverage has changed over the years.
If you remember back in, I think it was 1980, or no, it was 80 or 81. ESPN first televised the NFL draft. If you remember, Bob Lee and Chris Berman had they had like I think I remember it was back in 1986, and I think I remember ESPN 1980 they first broadcasted it, and they had like a land phone, a rotary phone, and a few other things, and a little like big board where they where they had all the players and such. So of course, as it evolved, there was a lot of skepticism. They were filming in an office. So now by the 90s, they moved for the hotel rooms to like the theater. They were at Radio City for a few years. And of course, this is when they started traveling it towards, different cities and such. And of course, NFL Network came in 06. That took it to a whole nother level. And of course, by 2010, it became a big night event, 3-night event, if you will, to maximize the TV ratings. And of course, they left New York back in 2015. Chicago's hosted it. We covered that. We were doing our show. They were doing the show together. I think that was the first year we did the show together. Was when the draft was here in Chicago, Nashville, of course, Detroit, Vegas. Now this year will be in Pittsburgh. So, and of course, 2020 the virtual draft. Cliff Kingsbury's bachelor pad. I wonder if he still has that bachelor pad out there in Arizona. He hasn't been with the Cardinals in a few years, but of course the current format with ABC now with the NFL Network, conjunction, ABC, ESPN, NFL Network. So that's how the draft has evolved over the years, and with all types of cameras, satellite, virtual stuff, voice, FaceTiming. So it's amazing how this whole thing has kind of evolved in the last 40 plus years.
I know we literally up against it. I'll just give you a quick memory. Up until about a decade ago, remember the first round used to take all day.
Yes.
So
yes.
If your team had a pick in the late teens and the 20s, you had to wait till 3, sometimes 5 o'clock at night to see how your team, who your team picked. But I'll give you one quick memory. I just got out of ICB at the time. I started working at a couple of small religious radio stations before I went to do Sporting News Radio. Remember the 2002 draft, the Willis McGahee?
Yes.
Remember that story? Obviously, that came out years later. Remember, he injured his knee in that Rose. It wasn't a Rose Bowl, but it was in the national championship game against Ohio State. Everybody thought, oh, he's going to drop it to the second round. He's going to drop it to the third round. Make a long story short, Drew Rosenhaus was his agent at the time. I remember watching this as ESPN went to commercial. Willis McGahee had both phones in his ear. Everybody thought that he was talking to teams. It turns out he wasn't. Drew Rosenhaus told him to do it. Guess what happened? He got drafted by Buffalo in the first round. I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, times have changed. Of course, now you see footage of guys, on the phone, talking to coaches, GMs, front office folks and such. So it's amazing how much this has kind of evolved over the years. And like you said, Sid, I mean, I remember like you had to wait like almost like 2 hours to see who your favorite team is going to pick. So thankfully, it's now becoming like a must-watch television. So with all the stuff that's going to come out, especially after Fernando Mendoza gets drafted by the Raiders, what's going to happen after that? So that's going to be the key. That's going to be must-see television.
And all the behind-the-scenes access has contributed heavily as well throughout the years. Now we have social media as another element. That's not going to go anywhere in time, which adds a big element to the draft coverage as well.
And we'll see if there's tipping picks, if you will. I know that some networks have decided that they're not going to do it. So there might be a limitation of that. So we'll see. But we'll see how ESPN and ABC and NFL Network kind of control that. Not to say that they're not going to be folks that are going to be tipping it off, but we'll have to wait and see on Thursday how that goes.
Yeah. And for Old School TV Monday, we salute Michael Jordan's historic 63-point performance against the Celtics in the coverage of the NFL Draft. LaKeena, take us on.
You can follow LaKeena McGee on the Twitter, X, Keenos again, IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sidney Brown, on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80, SIDKID80, SIDKID80. Be sure to follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
And be sure to catch Second City Sports live in the living color every Monday, every Friday from 12:15 to 2:15 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as the kids would say. Be sure to catch Second City Sports live in the living color every Monday, every Friday from 12:15 to 2:15 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
And if you missed a segment from our show, whether it's we talked about the NBA playoffs, baseball, and so much more, no worries. You can go back and watch it anytime, anywhere on Sports Zone Chicago's YouTube channels. You can catch replays of our show, Sean Sierra Sports, the Smoke Fellas, and all the other great content. You can catch the replays anytime, anywhere on Sports Zone Chicago's YouTube channels.
And you know we will provide.
We'll be recapping the first day of the NFL draft. Will there be some surprises? Will the Bears pull off some surprises? We'll see. We'll have that. And also our girl Chrissy Man from KXRP. And hopefully we'll have somebody on to help us recap day 1 of the NFL draft. What will happen in day 2 and 3. So we'll see what happens with that. Enjoy the playoffs, both the NFL draft, of course, and the NBA and Stanley Cup playoffs. Easy for me to say. Also the baseball as well. Some good ones here. And look, enjoy the weather. Just be good to each other. This has been Second City Sports on Sports Chicago. For Sid, I'm LaKeena. We'll see you guys on Friday. Be safe out there, folks.